you've got to look past that and say that the stuff that Dan Kennedy teaches, it's core, it's 100-year-old marketing principles.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Podcast.
Another Byte.
Hi, I'm Sophie Law and welcome to Another Byte. This is the YouTube show for MSPs if you want to improve your marketing and grow your business. And we do that by delving deep into the world of Paul Green's MSP Marketing Podcast. He's back with us this week. Just showed me his clapperboard. Sounds creepier than I intended it to. And we kicked off this week's podcast, Paul, with something that I feel like you are very, very au fait with, which is being old-fashioned and why it's good to be old-fashioned. You were talking about it in the terms of newsletters, printed, actual, hold in your hand, tangible printed newsletters.
Yes, I've missed an opportunity, haven't I, to have some in my hands, and they're in my bedroom next door. And I daren't open the door to my office because I'm having building work done at the moment. There are 4 builders downstairs laying concrete, and I'm hoping and praying they stay quiet enough during this recording that you can't hear them. But no, printed newsletters are awesome. So as I was saying on the podcast, I subscribe to something called the Schmidt Tax Report, which is just gorgeous. And I wouldn't expect you to understand it, but as a business owner,
I never imagine a newsletter being described as gorgeous. That's my first problem.
What, just a tax newsletter in general, you mean?
Any newsletter, really.
Well, so it's interesting. It's about relevance. So the other one I subscribe to is Russell Brunson's. Well, I actually get 2 for the price of one. I get a Russell Brunson one and a Dan Kennedy one, and they're both about marketing. And Dan Kennedy's sort of timeless marketing principles, and Russell Brunson is very much up-to-date digital stuff. I lap these up because this is my world. So this is the stuff that's of interest to me. You give me something new about marketing, and I'm licking the newsletter until the print comes off. You tell me how to save tax on some of my my rental properties. I'm licking the newspaper again. But if you showed me, I don't know what you're into, and I don't care. But let's say you're into
Heartstopper, much like your teenage daughter.
Heartstopper. Okay,
she and
yes.
I could watch Heartstopper content on the internet until I explode.
Okay, so Heartstopper is a Netflix TV show. Imagine if there was a Heartstopper printed newsletter, because I'm sure Gen Z would buy that.
I would be into it. I'm not going to lie to you.
You would,
yeah.
You would, because you're old. And that's the thing, the printed newsletter is just the medium. But in the digital world that we're in, where everything's so fast and it's so instant and it's so disposable, printed newsletters it's almost like the bastion at the end of the day. And I read mine, and I said this on the podcast, I don't mind admitting it to you, I read mine on the toilet.
Yeah, I did want to bring that up as well. That's not hygienic.
It's perfectly hygienic. I'm reading them before I use my hands to get my hands dirty. But without oversharing, a toilet break for me at the end of the day is a 20 to 30 minute luxury. Does that make sense? It's
30 minutes.
I don't want to take this channel to be scatological, but
you're a parent. How do you get 30 minutes alone on the toilet? Because I have not achieved that since 2012.
No, because your kids are a bit younger than mine. So mine's 11 and she's female, so she's actually 15. And so as long as I give her internet and food and drive her places, that's all she wants. Oh, maybe money. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I have disappeared from the house for 2 hours to go for a long run and do the food shop. And I've come back in and she didn't even notice I was gone. That's how you get to with older kids. But back to newsletters. It's the physical. It's turning the page. I write on my newsletters. I have a pen and a highlighter, and I'm taking photos of it, and it's very physical. And the newsletters store up in my bedroom because I have all my business books in my bedroom because I'm sad and single. Mm-hmm. And I have a pile of newsletters, and then every now and again I'll take them out and I give my accountant the tax ones, and I give my team who work with me on the marketing, I give them the marketing ones. It's awesome. I love it. And I know you can forward on emails and stuff, but there's just something about that physical print newsletter that's gorgeous.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree on that one. Something else we're going to disagree on is the fact that I'm not sure whether you realised when you were talking this week on the podcast about something called no BS, and you said, I urge you to type no BS into the internet. If you do that in the UK, you type knobs, Paul. I'm not typing knobs into the internet because I'm scared what will come up.
This is the episode of the show that's going to get us banned from YouTube, isn't it? So Dan Kennedy, who wrote the No BS, we all know what BS means, and it's the No BS book. And for years so he has a whole range of books called the No BS Guide to, and they are solid books. Go and literally buy all of the books. But you're right, here in the UK, we would say knobs. And you definitely don't want to type that. Certainly not unless you're in incognito. But they are great books. And
Okay.
Dan Kennedy is so he built up a company over 20, 30 years, which had various names. His last time he owned it, he was working with a guy called Bill Glazer, and it was the Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle or Inner Circle or something like that, GKIC. And then they sold the business to someone that didn't do very well, and they sold it again. And then Dan Kennedy nearly died 2 years ago. And the reason we know this is he actually sent out an email and he said, "This is my last ever email. I'm in a hospice. I've got advanced kidney failure."
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's kind of weird. I mean, I don't know how old Dan Kennedy is. He must be in his 60s. And he's like, kind of strange for him that he wrote this last letter. And then me and all my marketing friends every day, we're like waking up and, checking the news. Has Dan died yet? And he didn't. And it's almost, I guess this isn't embarrassing because you're not dead, but he made a full recovery. So
That's incredible.
whatever. I know. He got better. He came out of the hospice, and now he's I guess very semi-retired because he's still just stuck with Russell Brunson. He appears at shows and does consulting because that's his love. It's not work to him, but it's amazing. So he's had almost like a third lease of life. Just awesome. But what makes Dan Kennedy really cool is he is the least digital person ever. He doesn't even have an internet connection to his office.
Wow.
And I know this because Russell Brunson explains in detail. So if you want to communicate with Dan Kennedy, you can't email him. You have to fax him. I kid you not, right? I genuinely kid you not.
Very Phil Collins, circa 1982.
It is, and that's Phil Collins divorced his second wife, didn't he, by fax?
He
apparently. But yeah. So you might think, well, hang on, it's 2022. Why would I want to listen to a guy who communicates by fax? You've got to look past that and say that the stuff that Dan Kennedy teaches, it's core. It's 100-year-old marketing principles. It's the guy understands the psychology of marketing at a level that I can never hope to understand, that none of us can ever hope to understand. So go and get all the knobs books. Go and subscribe to Dan's newsletter.
Still not typing that into the internet, though, okay?
Russell Brunson bought the shell of what was left of Dan Kennedy's company after it had been sold a couple of times, and basically bought all of Dan's stuff. He bought 20, 30 years of content, and he's now republishing much of that content. And, so you've got content from the 90s and the noughties, which is still relevant today.
Well, this brings me nicely onto the next topic that we were talking about this week on the podcast, which is evergreen content. Something I think you're particularly keen on in terms of your old jokes, recycling or refreshing old content.
Yes.
And how that can work in terms of your SEO.
Yeah. So I'm not an SEO expert at any technical level, but it's like anything, isn't it? You hang around something enough, and the power of osmosis gives you some of that knowledge. So evergreen content is great for humans and great for search engines. So we were describing it on the podcast this week. It's a piece of content you put on your website and it won't get old. And as I look back at I've been reviewing recently some of my blog pages from 2016. And I've been reviewing them, looking at them, thinking, yeah, that's out of date. That's been superseded. That platform doesn't exist anymore, or this isn't a big thing anymore. So the challenge with evergreen content is writing it in a way that it never goes out of date. Although actually, the SEO superpower of a piece of evergreen content is to go back every year and slightly update it, and then put in the header, sort of whatever the title is, bracket updated for 2022.
It's a bit like reusing your old essays and stuff. This idea really appeals to me. It's like a tiny bit of work and you get a brand new thing.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly it. And there's so much content created. I read somewhere that something like 90% of all the content that humans have ever produced was produced in the last 5 years or something like that. So there's an insane amount of content out there, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. What we've got to do now is just cut through the noise. And for MSPs, there's this opportunity to do, well, I'll tell you, is what we're doing on our website right now. We're taking old blog articles and let's say I write about public relations, so PR. I might have written 5 or 6 blogs about PR over a 5-6 year stretch. So now we're merging all of those into one page and doing what we're calling ultimate guides. So at some point in the future, an MSP somewhere will type in PR for MSPs and up will come my ultimate guide, because we'll update it every single year. So that's an example of evergreen content. And we're actually repurposing old non-evergreen content into that evergreen content.
Chef's kiss.
Yes, thank you very much. It wasn't my idea. James Lyon, who works for me, came up with that idea.
Well done, James. Let's give him a little
James.
clap.
Well done. He's the true genius. He's the puppet master. I'm just the puppet.
Well, we all knew that. Other things you will hear on the podcast this week: an actual serving deputy sheriff. Not entirely sure how Paul managed that one, talking about the book he's written on success. And if you tune in to podcast 134 of Paul Green's MSP Marketing Podcast, you will genuinely hear Paul this week say, I know lots of successful people, because he's an idiot.
I'm not an idiot.
So you can find that anywhere you find your podcasts, and we will see you again for another bite next week.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Podcast.
Another Byte.